Hello and welcome back to the Let's Talk Horse Business podcast with me, George Betson, the equestrian business strategist and founder of Fonshaw Equine Transport. And today I'm joined by Rosie and Jemma from the Strength and Learning Through Horses charity, a charity that is truly, truly remarkable and Equestrian Business Awards winners. This conversation, you're going to hear about the incredible work that these people are doing for young people, bringing them up and through their challenges through the power of horses. We speak to Jemma, a human psychologist, and Rosie to discuss why they do what they do, how they do what they do, and the power of horses for people. So please sit back and enjoy the show. We're joined today by Jemma and Rosie from the Strength and Learning Through Horses charity, which is, I've been saying it all morning, trying to make sure I don't make a mistake with that. First of all, should we just start with Jemma and just introduce yourself and how you got started through your clinical research and background into where you are today?
Yeah. So my name's Jemma. I am a qualified clinical psychologist by training, but I'm also what's called a crazy horse kid from the 80s. So I grew up in Barnet, North London. I was lucky enough to have a share horse and then my own horse, and I was a member of the Mill Hill Pony Club, which no longer exists. It's probably one of the most city pony clubs. And I guess the point was that I started getting interested in using horses in a therapeutic way during my undergraduate when the internet was born, and that allowed me to connect with America and what was happening there. So that by the time I went and did my formal clinical psychology training, I had a kind of sense of what was going on in the rest of the world. And I was able to connect with some amazing people who shared with me some of the trainings that were coming over from America. And during that time, I asked University of East London, where I did my doctorate training, to let me explore the use of horses that was kind of taking place around 2008, 2009. It was some really wonderful people all over the UK that were just using horses in a therapeutic way. There weren't big centres, there weren't charities, one or two were. I actually went to visit an amazing place called Mares in Amersham. I don't know if they're still going, I hope they are. But I interviewed 8 people about their experiences with horses, and thus the word strength. And that kind of came out from my research. And then fast forward a couple of children, a job in the NHS, and people not coming into my clinic room in the NHS. I got together with one of our very first ESs, a lady called Bella Barr, and together we offered some sessions for free to some kids in Camden, and they really liked it. And then we offered a few more.
Yep.
And, but I think always, just to be really clear, I have like a solid background in understanding why these sessions worked from a kind of psychological research basis. And then I met Rosie, and she can tell you a bit more.
No, perfect. And just quickly then, from your background there, you're clearly seeing a gap in what the curriculum and the schools weren't fulfilling that horses could help with. Is that what you would say, potentially?
Less the educational point in that moment, because I think Rosie was the one that actually really noticed that gap. But I was basically, I was working in adolescent mental health care, and half the kids weren't coming. They just weren't coming to the sessions. I'd sit there in these really fancy clinic rooms and nobody was showing up. And I thought, I bet if I was in a field with horses, they'd come. And so we started doing it, but also we started by doing group work. And I think it's really important when you're working with young people to connect them with each other. That's why it's Strength and Learning Through Horses even today. We do a lot of group work because it's about connecting people through horses. So we make friends and contacts and meet other people that can look horses.
How did you come into this work from the horse side? Because obviously you have a slightly different background. How did that come about for you? And who are you?
Yeah, so my name's Rosie Bensley, and I came into this from the horse side. So our model of offering therapy is a qualified mental health practitioner working alongside a horse behaviour specialist. So I came into it in a couple of ways. So one is I was working training horses, and my interest was always the kind of horse psychology and the behaviour of horses and working with horses with sort of challenging behaviour. And through that work, I started to realise, as we all know, that it's not really about the horses, it's about the people. And the skills we're learning with the horses are also the people skills. So by helping people be more confident and assertive with their horses, they were saying things like, oh, my relationship with my kids is better now, or I'm more assertive at work. So I was realising that it was way beyond that we were just working with people and their horses. I also went to university, and at university I studied anthropology, and I remember writing an essay on the cultural elements of mental health, and how if you live in a culture, for example, that believes in shamanism and you hear voices, then you become really esteemed in society. As here, you get seen as a bit of an outcast, and your experience is then not about the symptoms, it's about how society fulfills it. So that kind of gave me the interest of coming into this work. And then I met Jemma on a livery yard as a psychologist, coming at the same journey, but from a different perspective. And yeah, the rest is history.
Amazing. And so when you first put this into practice with horses, sort of like the therapy sessions around loose horses and that, how did that, obviously you had this idea that is then turned into something. So how did that feel for you, and how did that shape into what it is today?
Yeah, so my professional background, so I juggled a few different things. So I was always doing the horse training stuff because it's a passion/addiction, something I can't let go of. But I'd also spent a good few years working in sales and marketing because I had a feeling I'd want to work for myself eventually. And I thought, you know what, I need to get some solid business skills. So I think both Jemma and I, from the very start, after that initial taster sessions that Jemma was talking about, we've always had our eye on, right, how do we know this works, we know it has a lot of impact, we need to find ways to grow it and sustainably, because we can't help young people if we're not able to make the money and set up something that's a genuinely sustainable organization. So we did a lot of banging the phones and selling. And I remember going to in the very early days, going to I think it was a careers fair in Barnet, and a man came up to me and said, oh, you do the thing that's playing with ponies, don't you? In a very, very patronizing way. Which has definitely changed since then. No one would ever say that to us in the local area now, but we were battling those sort of perspectives, I think, to start with.
I think what really helped is two things. Number one, we had an opportunity to go for what's called a tender within Camden, London Borough of Camden. And I've never done a tendering process before. We'd set up as a very small charity. Rosie and myself had managed to find I think even before we'd found a very small yard to start operating in, we had to do something called a tender process. And in a tender process for a local authority, you've got to basically talk about what your offer is, and you have to link it to kind of goals and outcomes for young people. And it's not like you have to make this up, but you have to, exactly like Rose is saying, it's not about being fluffy. You have to be very clear about what it is that you're offering and how that fits with their objectives for young people. And so going through that tender process, then you get a sense of, actually, as a charity, you've got some aims and objectives. You've got what's called a theory of change, which is, I'm doing this weird stuff with horses, but actually there are some very tangible outcomes. So like Rosie's saying, not only were we able to sell ourselves from kind of a media and business point of view, but also from a psychological, that actually what we're doing has there's a real reason behind it. There's some theory behind it, and it works. And that actually really helped us get to the next phase. And then we got kind of other tenders and other opportunities through councils and schools through having those very clearly defined objectives and outcomes.
Okay, yes. I think that is one thing that people often lack when they go into any business, actually, because by having the clear objectives, outcomes, and knowing what you're selling or wanting to achieve, you clearly have managed to make this thing happen, which a lot of people would have struggled to do.
Yeah. And I think also clinical psychologists, the whole reason we're kind of involved in delivering services is we're very much linked to research. So you're supposed to be practicing what has been researched as effective. You shouldn't just have a nice idea and it just seems to create a nice feeling for people. Actually, there's some really clear evidence. And I think that's where Rosie and myself complement each other, is that I come up with the evidence and she sells it.
Fantastic.
And she's also got, I think also, but just to say, and Rosie can say this bit, but Rosie's also the horse training side. There's a lot of evidence out there now. So it's not just Rosie's gone off and done some weird, wonderful training. I'm sure she has, but she's gone and done very evidential horse training using current scientific research. And that's, I think, what sets us apart as an organisation, that we're not going to do anything unless there's really good evidence behind it for both horses and humans.
And I think that came from that first, you're playing with ponies statement, probably. The real, you've got some PR work to do here. This isn't fluffy. It's perceived as fluffy. And so we need to show that there's real concrete reasons and outcomes that anyone would understand, not only horsey people. Because as horsey people, we all get it, I think.
The best way to go from here is probably to get, who would be best to give us a real, I mean, you're probably both just as equipped, but I'm looking for an explanation of what the equine-assisted therapy is, the well-being groups that you work with, and the alternative education, whoever wants to take that.
Well, shall I start with the therapy side and Rosie can go into alternative education? So essentially, equine-assisted therapy, and I'm going to be really clear, we only use the word therapy when there is a registered therapist in the space with the young people. Otherwise, we call it equine-assisted wellbeing or equine-assisted learning. So if we are doing therapy sessions, we always have a registered therapist. So we have a psychotherapist, trainee clinical psychologists and psychologists at our site. Varying degrees of other trainees, but all are in a formal therapeutic training. And I suppose it looks different for everyone that does this work across the UK. Initially, we trained in a model called the IAGALA model, which is a model where you have a qualified mental health professional therapist with a horse professional and a couple of horses in a very, very open space. And you do some exercises with the horses to help bring about thinking and reflection in the people. Now, we obviously work with young people. So sometimes with young people, they don't like to talk so much as adults. When this is done in America, adults have lots to say, but actually our young people often do have a lot to say. But it's about creating a space where they can interact with the horses, both in their bodies and then think about in their heads and share with us what's going on for the horses. And in doing so, then there's the kind of final element, which is thinking about how the horses are similar to themselves and how the lives of the horses and the things that the horses are experiencing and dealing with are similar to things in their lives. So essentially they're talking about themselves through the horses, but we've got these snapshots of the young person with the horse in their body, what their body's doing with the horse. We've got them in relationship with the horse, and we've got also, if you've got two horses, you've got them being in relationship with the two horses. They might prefer one over the other. We've then got an opportunity for them to see the horses in action and comment on their relationship. So they can think about relationships in general in the world through what they see in the horses. And then finally, they can relate it to themselves and the people that they live and work with. So it almost hits every single marker of what it is to be a human being in the world. And that's what's so wonderful about it. So that's the kind of therapy, and that's all of the work that we do in a nutshell, all the way through to the education. And different therapists work in different ways. Some work on more focusing on the body and thinking about trauma and how trauma sits within the body. Others work on helping the young people think about their relationships. But most importantly for me, and I think this links to the educational work, it's not just about what happens in the session. It's about connecting the young people with a future version of themselves that's about their strengths and abilities and not about what they're finding difficult. And I think that's where the educational work fits so beautifully in. And that's why I think it's such a big part of the equestrian industry, because we want these young people to take the skills that they've got and go and use them in a productive way, whether it's in the equestrian industry or by going back to school or by taking, because actually horse people are great people, because we really, if you're a good horse person, you've really got a good sense of what it is to recognize something that's going on for a person. Yes. And that's an amazing skill. So I'll let Rosie take it from here.
Yeah, so just adding into that, so we started, as Jemma said, with purely the therapy. That's where we began. But we saw quite quickly, as we were seeing young people coming to us at point of crisis, they were really engaging with the therapeutic work and getting their lives to a much better place, but still having challenges. They weren't quite feeling able to go back to school or to go to engage with other young people in sports clubs. But they really trusted us because they trusted the horses, and they found the stables environment really a great place to be. So from there, we set up an educational offer. The focus is on employability skills. So it's trying to develop skills that will support young people back to education or into employment or into volunteering. Working with the horses to develop resilience. Working with a horse that can't be caught and spending 45 minutes trying to get a head collar on is about resilience. Working with a 17-2 horse when you're feeling really anxious is about confidence and the skills you need to go to a job interview. Mucking out a stable in 20 minutes is about time management. So taking the skills of the horses and thinking about how that's going to help them in their lives. And then from there, we had young people that finished our education courses and then said, you know what, some of them said, I really want to go and work with horses as a profession. So then we started thinking about, right, we need to offer something to offer them vocational qualifications to help them along that path. So we've become a BHS centre, and we offer not just the Changing Lives Through Horses programme, but we're working towards BHS stage 1 for a lot of our young people. And then we had other young people that don't want to go work with horses, but they were going to school, but they were struggling just socially and finding places where they could build friendships with other young people. So we set up a wellbeing offer to support young people to make friendships. So our offer's grown really organically, and I think we now think of ourselves more as a holistic youth charity where young people can come to us with any challenge, and we will help provide some sort of support that helps them meet them where they're at and help them get to where they want to go.
Wow.
And just to add, I think, so we do see children both individually and in groups. So we have some children that we have to close the whole site for because they might have quite significant learning needs and and behaviour that is really quite challenging. So some children will come with 2 carers that need to be with them at all times because they're at risk of running off or harming themselves. So we will shut the whole site down, but obviously that's a lot more cost effective and time effective, and someone has to fund them. So where possible, where it is possible, we try and connect children together in groups to do this thinking together. But there are obviously children with really significant struggles that do need that space to have those sessions on a one-to-one basis. So we might see them for a year initially before transitioning them into a group. And I think the real outcome of all the mental health thinking around COVID is one of the biggest issues is feeling just so disconnected from each other, and particularly because of social media. So I think that's why it's really important for us to, yes, we can see children on their own for therapeutic and educational offers, and some we see educationally as well alone, but actually it's the connecting children together, because wherever they go, they're going to have to live with people. If they go to a university or they want to go to college, they're going to have to cope with other people. So it is part, and we want to connect children to each other because they're the ones with the answers, not us adults. We don't know what it's like to be them in their world. And you do really see these kind of magical moments of the horses helping connect the children.
Wow. And so to paint the picture for people who are listening, I know we've talked a lot about young people and clearly you've mentioned some specific types of people, but can we just actually highlight where are these young people coming from? How, and what sort of needs do they have? Is it specifically anxiety and trauma? Is it more to do with struggling to get, perhaps get on in schools? Is there like could you give a bit of picture for that for us?
I can start with the numbers.
Yeah, you start with the numbers. It's a good idea.
Sorry. So last year we saw 648 young people in terms of who they are, where they came from. So they were all under the age of 25. Most of them were 12 and upwards. So 80% were in that age group, and a good mix between male and female. So I think that's quite a big thing in the horse industry that we see is normally about 50-50%. In terms of the challenges that they'd experienced, so a quick rundown of that. So 52% had an educational health and care plan in place, which Jemma can talk about what that means. But basically it means is they've been identified, they've got additional funding from the local authority because they struggle to access mainstream education without additional measures put in place. 41% were not currently attending mainstream education. 45% were eligible for free school meals. 38% had a learning disability. 41% had an autism diagnosis. 25% had experienced adverse childhood experiences that resulted in safeguarding involvement to protect them from harm. And 13% were care experienced, having been made the subject of a care order. So those are all the numbers. And Jemma can then talk about actually the stories that we hear and the kind of stories that we have from young people.
I think that'd be really important. So yeah, it would be great if we could hear something.
Yeah. Well, Rosie did a great job of explaining EHCPs, and I'm not an educational psychologist, but more and more children and their parents are recognising that just typical education offers just aren't suitable for many, many children. Many because of issues around neurodiversity that makes it hard for them to learn in a school environment, which are big classes, loud noises, and you can imagine the stables is a complete reversal of that. It's quiet-ish. And the noises are all organic and come from nature or kind of horses and people. And it's just, it's just a whole different way of learning. And most of our young people like to learn by not sitting at a desk. So we all learn, like us horsey people, you learn about first aid standing next to a horse with a wound and someone telling you, and you lean down and learn how to bandage it physically. But that's more of the educational stuff that we do. From the therapy side, we work with everybody, but I think more and more we're seeing a complex mix of all the above that Rosie has said. So we work with some children who have had really wonderful childhoods, but are really struggling, maybe due to COVID or bullying at school, with issues of huge anxiety. We're working with children who haven't had such wonderful childhoods, and I think we used to see about 50%. I don't know if it's slightly different now, but 50% would have had some kind of issue within their family, which had led social workers to go in and check on their well-being. And that could be parental mental health struggles, parental divorce, bereavements, again, similar things, and just lack of opportunity as well, working parents. The more that we're open, the more complex the picture we're seeing. So we often see someone who has all of the above. And actually, the kind of professional mental health systems, they're really set up for children who can sit in a room and talk about what's going on and do homework, from a kind of, chat and go out into the world and try some things and then go back and tell their therapist. Well, lots of our children won't even talk to a therapist, and they certainly won't attend a small kind of clinic-based setting with a chair and a table and be able to stay in the room. And that is often related to early experiences of trauma or what's going on in their brain and body that just means sitting in a room and talking is really difficult. Some don't even have the language to access how they're feeling. Okay. Because of either learning disability or early experiences. So they've not actually got the language to describe how they're feeling, but they can see it in a horse, and we can help them build it. So some of the basics of our work is almost like reparenting children, so that they begin to notice what's going on for them, and they do that through the horse. So they notice things like tension in the body, and they link that to feeling anxious or worried or angry. Yes. So really we're seeing more and more complex young people where just typical services just don't fit.
Wow. And I think I can hear your passion about all of this. Well, it's really coming through in the way you're describing it. And I think it's, I've heard a lot of people, I actually bumped into somebody 2 weeks ago, and it's probably slightly different to what you're doing because you're very much focused on the younger generation and clearly have a work with more complex situations. But they're also running sessions a bit like yourselves for corporate businesses, and where they are bringing people in and using horses for team building and leadership and other things. Would you say what you do is just a different type of that?
I'll let Rosie finish, but I'll just say we're all people. So even if you work in the corporate world, you may have still had these experiences as a child, and they will be affecting you in your day-to-day job. And we do actually also, I'll let Rosie talk about the corporates, but we do see parents as part of our work. So often it's the parents that really need the support. And we do parent and young people programs where parents also join in the work with the horses, and we help them think about relationships and what a safe, secure kind of relationship with good communication looks like through working with a horse. So they think about being a parent through working with horses and thinking about what horses need. I'll let Rosie talk about the corporate stuff.
Yeah, so I think wearing another hat, I sit on the board of something called the Equine-Assisted Services Partnership. So this has been developed to try to become the industry voice for equine-assisted services. So people using horses to help people, which is got a massive scope. And it's something we're seeing more and more, developing more and more as the years are going on, because I think it's the antidote to modern society, isn't it? We're all so disconnected. We're all on our phones. We're not connected with our bodies and the bodies of others. So we're all finding different ways that the horses are helping people to reconnect with themselves. So that's from, spanning from ridden work to physiotherapy work to, as you say, the corporate team building work. And it's all using exactly the same mechanism. We've specialised. So when we first started, we did quite a lot of adult works. We did some work with drug and alcohol units and some veteran work. But as we've gone on, we've had to specialise and know where we need to stick. We do corporate team building days sometimes to help raise money. But I think we're all more than ever in need of that connection with nature, and this work with the horses can do that, even for people where we've got the horsey lot like that. We do it every day and we can't live without it. But for just anybody, spending an hour a year going and doing this work and just reconnecting can be really valuable.
Wow.
And just to add, I think one thing, the difference between adults and children is an element of power. So an adult at some point can get on the bus, get in the car. I know resources around horses are really tricky, but an adult usually can take themselves off and find a horse if they really, really want to, hopefully using connections, and horsey people are generally really welcoming. But children can't, particularly children who grow up in inner cities where, you know, in Hertfordshire, I think, I keep sharing this number, and I work with some of the people on the amazing, like there's the BHS Access Facebook pages, and I'm a really keen, like, Hertfordshire horse riders Facebook page, but 200 stables in Hertfordshire have been knocked down in the last, I think, 10 years, if not more, all to build housing. And what that's meant is those grassroots riding schools are all disappearing. So children have less and less access to stables. So children that we work with come from London Borough of Camden, Islington, Westminster, all over the shop. You know, even in Brent and Barnet, there are very, very few stables now that aren't very expensive for children to access. There are still some amazing ones around, and we're really well connected. And the RDA is amazing, but you know, they've got massive waiting lists, 2-year waiting lists for some of these stables. So unless you've got £70 for a 45-minute riding lesson, it's more and more difficult. And I think we need to advocate on behalf of getting kids outside and connected with horses, because the rural environment is being eaten away. I know people need to live somewhere, but we're advocating on behalf of young people. And you know, I have 2 teenagers, and I can't tell you the kind of limitations on physical exercise at school. You know, there's so many pressures at school, and I think that's what Rosie and I really connect with, is the pressures of school, the pressures of children, social media. They're constantly coming in from school, long days at school, lots of pressure, and then they're sitting on their phones. They're not getting outside. They're not moving their bodies, and it's leading to an obesity epidemic. But it's also so connected to their mental health. They're eating loads of crap. You know, it's all connected, and we really do feel like horses and outdoor activities are going to be an answer to that. They need a bit of mud in their nails, you know.
I didn't grow up with horses, but I had a need to be with horses when I was about 15, 16. And since then, I've been exactly that. I go back to the horses for grounding. I love the outdoors. But you've made an absolutely important point that most of us now sit, whether it be a classroom, whether it be a job, whether it be driving for me, because I've also got a horse transport business. We spend a lot of time sitting. So that's a really, really important point. And I will just make another point where you've spoken about the reducing numbers of stables in that particular area. Well, I interviewed somebody recently where they were able to tell me, based on their own research, that we had around 8,000 riding stables back in 2021. I'm sure it was. It might be 2019. But now the count is just under 4,000. It's about 3,500 riding stables now exist in the country. So that is really, really important. The work that you're doing is really important for that reason. But I'd love just to move on now. Again, I like building pictures for the listeners. So I'd love to ask Rosie, what's a typical day on your yard? What's it like there? How many horses do you have? How do you manage all of those horses? It must be fascinating.
Good question. And first off, I don't actually get my hands muddy very often anymore, so I'm not the one that's on the yard. But a typical day. So we have 14 horses currently. I think it's 14. We have a track system, so they all live out all of the time. That's partly because our whole model is about thinking psychologically. So in order to, and understanding that behavior is always about communication. And so therefore we need our horses to be able to live in as most natural way as possible and to be really feeding their well-being needs so that we can do the same for the young people. So it's partly for that. I'll be honest, it's also partly because we are currently on a completely dilapidated stable. So our history is we moved there 3 years ago, and we've got 40 acres on lease from the council. When we took it on, it was an entirely dilapidated riding stables that the council had sort of forgotten that they owned almost. And we spent 400,000 developing it to the point we've got now. So we've got an arena, we've boarded up the unfit buildings, and we've got some porta cabins. We have 2 stables that leak, that's all we have, and some field shelters. So to set the scene, it's currently a very muddy situation. So the horses all live out. The yard team will be in at 8 a.m. to see to their horses. So they will come in, they'll be fed, there'll be welfare checks. Any that are working for the day might be brought into the field shelters to get ready for the day. And then at 9 a.m, the rest of the team will arrive. On any given day, I think we will have between 10 and 20 staff on site, some for the full day, some freelance coming in and out. But at 9 a.m, all the staff arrive, and then it becomes a whirlwind in the summer from 9 a.m. to after 7:30 at night, where we're preparing for sessions, delivering sessions, debriefing, and starting again. So a busy day will be, and there's quite a lot of negotiating around the horses. We've got a big whiteboard where people can put their name down for we'd like to work with this horse on this day, and for this session, and a big list about what activities each horse can do, which ones they enjoy. Most of our horses are retired, so they've got a combination of physical challenges and also emotional challenges, which is really great for us. We don't want a herd of perfect horses. We need horses where any young person that walks through the door can see themselves in the characters we've got in the herd. So we've got some that are a bit bolshy, and when they're feeling under pressure, they definitely move into pressure and they might be quite nibbly. We've got some that are very anxious, and then when they're feeling under pressure, they don't go anywhere near anybody. And we have everyone in between. And there are some definite favourites. So a lot of the work is about protecting the favourites. So we have the yard team who are spending the day really making sure we're centering the welfare of the horses and giving them their lunches, sorting out the rugs and the usual yard work. And then we've got a team of equine specialists and mental health specialists who are in a whirlwind of minibuses coming in and out and taxis coming in and out for individual young people.
Wow. Sounds like quite the setup, especially when you've got that many you got that sort of size team on the ground and the horses. And actually, aside from all of that, I was really intrigued that you used a track system, because I think that is also a bit of a hot topic at the moment in the equestrian space. I mean, what brought you to that decision? Was it simply because of the knowledge you have around their psychology and you were like, this is the best resource for them? Or was it something else?
Yeah, so it's partly necessities. We're in London, that we don't have a massive access to masses and masses of acreage. So in the summer, the best way to manage the horses to get the maximum movement is to have them on that track system. We're also on London clay, so it means the grass is very, very rich. So, and a lot of our horses, and then they're retired, so they're not on work. So it means that we can keep an eye on their diet. We keep all of our horses without shoes. Partly for finances, because it's a lot cheaper, partly for safety. So we have got less chance of injury when young people get their feet stepped on or if horses kick each other. And partly because we believe in most cases, it's the best thing to do for the horses. But again, if we're managing the horses without shoes, intake of grass and sugar is quite a big part to play.
And just to add that the young people, so when they come for the education groups in particular, but also for the therapy groups, we try where possible to get the young people to contribute to the daily care of the horses. So, for example, poo picking might seem like a really simple activity, but it's actually one of our most popular activities. It's really mindful. It helps the kids regulate their emotion. It teaches them from an educational side about grass and land management, and it helps clear the fields of poo in the summer and allows our staff to then go and work with young people. So we all contribute, and it's also, it's really enjoyable and brings like even the staff from schools come and help poo pick. Everyone seems to really enjoy it. And also these are jobs that need doing in the equestrian industry. So even a child with some of our best poo pickers are the children with significant learning disabilities because they love these repetitive tasks. So you can see where this all fits in with sending young people out into the equestrian industry and giving them these skills.
No, absolutely. So on top of that, so I'm just looking here at my notes because I did do some notes for our discussion, and it's been fantastic, but we're well behind where I wanted to be. So I'm just having a look here to think about what would be really useful for our listeners to understand. And really, I mean, I think you've painted a fantastic picture already. But what I was just thinking was whether it's worth. I mean, do you both ever work at the same time with a client, for example? Would you both be there and have a client or a group of clients coming to work with the horses and work it between you?
Yeah. I mean, so our model is that we would always have someone trained with the horses and someone trained with people working together. That's our absolute model, and that's the model of best practice. It's not all the time. I mean, Rosie and I personally don't get to work together that much anymore because we're often training other members of staff, but that's how we started. And I think also it's that real connection between her psychological thinking around horses and mine around people, and the fact that we're actually friends outside and we go on horsey holidays together, but we have the same view of the world, and so we as a team have these connections, and it's a really great connection between therapeutically trained individuals and psychologically informed horse professionals, it's a real absolute mirroring perfect match, because actually the stuff that horse trainers are using now, and we've got some colleagues who have trained in kind of intelligent horsemanship, it's exactly the same kind of thinking and psychological training as you would train when you're trying to understand people. So if that answers your question.
Yeah, I guess what I was hoping to ask is there a situation that you could give me an example or a case study where maybe you've experienced something, and it was together, which is why I was going to ask you, but maybe it wouldn't be, where have you experienced something, an anonymized story where Jemma describes sort of how she saw it from your point of view, but then Rosie describes how that worked with the horse, is what I was trying to get at.
And I think probably most sessions maybe go that way. So quite often the horse is the first person to notice, which is exactly why we work with the horses. So we'll be working with a young person. I can think of an example. So we used to have, my personal horses are no longer at the charity, but they used to be. And I have a horse called Daisy who's had a lot of trauma from Ireland, but generally, and she's a broodmare, quite a nurturing horse. Never ever, I very rarely see her put her ears back. She's more of a runaway type of horse, definitely a flight over fight. And Jemma and I working with the client, she probably won't remember this exact example, but Daisy suddenly or during this whole session was just looking very grumpy and uptight in her face. The client wasn't doing anything obvious in their behaviour, but the horse was obviously picking up on something internal to that person who was holding something, a lot of anger, a lot of frustration that she wasn't able to verbalize. And that will either happen in a session where I will share my observations, it's interesting, that horse is really putting its ears back today. And then Jemma will then take that to try and think about what the horse has worked out about the client, and if she can help guide the client to make that reflection themselves. And that is the essence of the whole work. So the horse is doing the horse, and then I'm translating the horse, I guess, as the horse professional, which then gives an opening for the mental health professional and the client to try and take the horse's message and do something meaningful with it.
I think the bit that I come in is to try and put it to the client in a way that it's not a challenge, but a question, and being really curious. I wouldn't say, there's something about you today that's making that horse angry. That's absolutely not how we work. And there's very clear reasons for that. So the reason for it is I've used the word angry. No one really knows if that horse is angry, because even Rosie, being a brilliant horse psychologist, she doesn't actually know. She has a good sense, but nobody is that horse. So we can never 100% as humans say what horses are feeling. And we're very good at thinking that we know what they're feeling, but actually we really don't. And they're very, very complex, but we probably have a good sense. So it's presenting the information that the horse is bringing to the person in a way that they can take it on board and think about it and process it in a way that it's, challenging them or making them feel bad about themselves, but putting it in a way. And that's where the psychologist comes in, is to try and present the information that the horse is bringing in a way that they can connect with it. And I imagine, these situations come up all the time, that the client will maybe say initially, no, I don't think, I think that horse, I don't like that horse. And, so I'm listening to their tone of voice and the way that they're picking up on the information, even before I'm asking them to think about it, so we're giving them a piece of information and we're thinking about how do they relate to that information. But then, they might see something else in the horse that they really connect with. And actually then maybe an hour later, as the session's gone on and they've really got to understood that horse, they didn't like that horse at first, they found it quite challenging, they recognise something in themselves about that horse, and actually something they didn't like about themselves that they found really hard to share. Another really good example is we've got an ex-racehorse, her name's officially Storm and Glory. She was, again, a horse that came with a lot of challenges, and she's really, really sensitive, probably due to pain from her racing career. And she was on the yard and some girls were having to work with her, and she was really kind of demonstrating not wanting to be touched. And the young person said, I hate Glory. She's really annoying. She doesn't, because a lot of kids want the horses to be friendly and inviting, and often they're not. They might not want always to be around people. Anyway, but then so she found out that Glory actually really didn't want all that cuddling and fuss. But then they were part of an education group. They had to go and do a challenge with Glory. I think they were learning to lunge. Now, Glory's actually really well trained, having come from the racing industry. She lunges and long lines beautifully. So having then seen Glory doing her job as teaching them how to long line, they came back onto the yard beaming, I love Glory. Because actually, just like us, horses have things that they're really good at and things that they just don't like. This horse just doesn't like being touched, and we have to accept that. And that helps our young people accepting, I'm really good at that, but just don't talk to me or touch me, because that's actually something I really don't like and I never will. And, you know, we're very accepting, and that's how we work, is that we're all different and we all have different needs, and we can all hate some things and love others, and be good at some things and hate others.
Yeah. I think you put that really well. I think that's fantastic. And it brings me on to a really important point, which is about welfare, because I have to bring this up because it comes up a lot these days. And particularly maybe Rosie, this might be great for you. How do you manage the horses' welfare and how they are feeling, and how, you know, whether are they consenting to this? What are their boundaries? How do you work with that around the people as well?
Yeah, perfect. I think it's a really good question. And I think it's something we have an honest conversation about, because I think there can be a framing. I've seen it in the media a little, of that equine therapy has got amazing benefits for the horses as well as the young people. And sometimes it can be, sometimes the sessions are brilliant and the horses love it. And sometimes they may not enjoy being in this space with a lot of negative energy. So in terms of how we centre horse welfare, I think it's just that we centre it. It's always at the front. It's always at the forefront of what we're doing at any given moment. And we try and give the horses as much choice as possible. So where possible, we have the horses loose so that they can have the option to leave if they want. And if they don't have that option, stay on ropes, then they would only be working with equine specialist who's very, very good at reading horse behaviour, so that they can advocate on behalf of the horse and read those more subtle signs that a young person might not pick up on. We are a member of the National Equine Welfare Council, which I think is very important. They've got different guidelines for different spaces, but they have specific guidelines for equine-assisted services. I mean, I could probably go on about it all day, the different things that we do. One small thing that we do is we are very clear that we don't have used the word use the horses, so we work with the horses, and the staff all get very clear training that the very most important thing in the session is centering the horse welfare. Now, that is because horse welfare is important, but that's also because our whole model of work underpins that. It's about thinking about the other and what they need and honouring that. So if we had a session where the horse doesn't really want to be involved in being groomed, but the young person really wants to groom the horse to calm themselves down, and we make a choice that we're going to prioritise the young person's needs over the horse in that moment, it might feel like a success because that young person's had a session where they feel more regulated and they go away feeling happy. But in reality, it's not a success, because what we've taught that young person is that if someone is having a challenge, then you don't listen to their needs, and it's okay to override them, which is a message they could internalize for themselves. So actually, by putting a stop on that session, and this horse isn't enjoying this, let's do something else to find out what they enjoy. It's way more powerful, because you're sending that message to the young person that they can do the same for themselves and for other young people.
Really, really, really important. No, that's really well explained. Thank you. And so that brings us on to the next chapter, which is the business end of the charity and the reality of it, if you don't mind. Running a business in the equestrian space is hard. Running a charity, I can imagine, is harder. I can only imagine. So how does it work for you? Where's your funding? Is it through referrals and local authorities? Is it through commissions? Is it through fundraising and grants? How does your charity sustain itself in a very, very challenging industry?
Good question. I'll take this one, because I'm the one I'm the one that stays up at night panicking about money mostly. Historically, so taking it back 5 years or so ago, we were 50-50 funding, from 50% people paying to come to us. So that's local authority contracts, that's schools, that's also parents individually. And then 50% fundraising. So that's private donors and also grants and trusts. So things like the lottery, those types of things. As time has gone on, it's got more and more challenging to ask people to pay. So we know there's a crisis in local authority funding, there's a crisis in education funding, and people have less money in their pockets because of cost of living. So we are now about 30% fees paid, 70% fundraising, which in itself is getting more challenging, because all the other charities are in the same boat. So they're all going to the grants and the funders saying, can we have your money? And so there's more competition and less to go around. So our challenge is making sure that we're just we do the very best work we possibly can and evidencing that, so we've got the best chance of going for fundraising, but also operating ourselves very much as a business. So even though we're a charity, we can't be taking risks or wasting money or making decisions based on what would be nice without a really good business case. So we have a really strong business plan in place. We've got a great board of trustees who bring a wealth of experience from all different areas, from the NHS to other charities to business, and they hold us to account. So between us all, we have to make behind the scenes quite hard business decisions about where we're going to allocate our resources, when we can say yes, when we can say no, where we're focusing our efforts, so that the front-facing staff can take the empathetic approach once the clients get to us.
Yeah. No, exactly. And I think you're already, and what you've also done is taken steps about how you manage your horses for their welfare, but also in a sustainable way as well, which is something I think people overlook in general equestrian side of things. It's all about making more money, whereas actually there are steps clearly you have taken that sort of reduce the monthly costs, let's say.
Yeah, and we're clever. So we sit down each month with the team and we say, here's our money, here's our targets, here's our shortfall, and we all have a brainstorm about where else we can bring in money. So the horses are a great example, actually. So most of our horses are working retirement liveries. So they actually bring in an income that covers their keep, because we realise we don't do riding, we don't need horses that can be ridden. We were getting emails. I get 2 or 3 emails a week for people offering me their horses for free, and then we just started saying, yes, of course we're offering retirement livery. So that brings an income in itself. And the other big challenge is how we can tie more into corporate donors and the equestrian industry, because we know people in the horse world get this stuff. They know how much horses can help well-being. So the challenge, and I think that's why it's amazing that we won the Equestrian Business Awards Charity of the Year, is how can we kind of springboard and get ourselves more well-known in the equestrian industry to find more support. So we're incredibly lucky that we have Carl Hester as one of our patrons. Premier Equine has recently come on board as one of our sponsors. We've historically had sponsorship and support from Ascot Racecourse and Martin Collins Enterprises. So our challenge for the next year or two is how do we expand our networks in the equestrian industry and our profile. So if anyone's got any ideas, then get in touch.
Yeah. I think you've done a great thing there by winning the Equestrian Business Awards. I mean, that was fantastic. And what a night that was. I mean, did you enjoy it as well? I'm sure.
We've been voted for a lot of things and we never win, because I think the equestrian field often goes for the rehab and rescue charities, which are amazing and, really also overwhelmed. But to have we hadn't written a speech. We were generally, Rosie and I was just so shocked. I was so shocked that I actually got the number of children that we support wrong. And I said 750, not 650. So it is 650 we supported. But just trying to let equestrians know that we, even in London, where we are, there are children desperate to understand and get involved in the equestrian world, and we're the first step on that. And we would, it makes us so proud when we know a child's background story and we know that they're at Hartpury. We've got one young person who's made it all the way to Hartpury, but we're just as proud when we hear that a young person's found a job poo picking on someone's local yard. And I think that's why my request to the equestrian industry, and they're already really good at this, is these kids are they're gonna help us be better. They're going to help keep us going. They're going to help build the stable yards and keep the track liveries open. And that's the future for equestrianism, is putting people back with horses in green spaces somewhere. Might not be stables, might be more track systems, but and fighting for the equestrian in places and spaces by promoting their importance for people.
Yes.
As well as the horses.
Absolutely. And I think that ties in really nicely with your vision of where we're going. So, I mean, over the next 5 to 10 years, obviously, you've done incredible work, but where are you heading with this? Is it to build more mental health services within what you do? Is it more educational? Is it all of that and more? What would you say for that?
So our big vision for the next few years is we need to upgrade our centre so that we can see more young people. So we have a massive waiting list. We can't get through them all. And a lot of that is about use of space. So we currently are operating on a semi-derelict stable yard that we're making the best of. In the summer, we can use all the fields and can run concurrently lots of different groups at once. So in the summer, we will have 2 groups of 8 young people at any one time, and then maybe 3 individual young people coming for one-to-one support spread over our acreage. In the winter, the mud sets in, and we are then left with just our arena, basically, and our small building spaces. So we have to turn young people away in the winter when they're struggling the most. So we have planning permission to build a purpose-built centre with 2 service delivery zones, fully disabled accessible, sheltered areas, an indoor covered barn, everything we're going to need for the future, which will mean that we can expand our capacity to seeing probably 800 plus young people a year, and seeing them in facilities that really meet their needs. And we've got sensory zones and full disabled accessibility. So that's the main priority, because we're already doing great work. We've got a great staff team. We're evidencing it well. So we need the facilities to really settle in and sustain ourselves. Beyond that, I think Jemma and I, anyway, initially are quite clear we don't want to be managing any other centres directly, but we want to just be generous with our knowledge and share our learning. We learn from others. We do quite a lot of shared learning with other organisations in this space, but thinking how can we input to learning in the mental health field, in the education field, and with others directly wanting to work with horses to improve the lives of young people.
Amazing. Looking forward over the next 5 to 10 years, obviously you might be looking to build, you're going to continue building and doing the work that you're doing, but what support or partnerships do you need to make that happen, whether it be schools, businesses, donors, fundraisers? What is it that you guys need to make your mission possible?
Yes, so we've been so lucky over the years to have people supporting us in all sorts of different ways, from our volunteers to our trustees, to our staff, to financial supporters, people supporting with their expertise. I think we need support and expertise and partners in 3 different areas. One is in the equestrian industry. So we're incredibly lucky that we have Carl Hester as our patron. We have some equestrian brands who've come on board to support us, including Premier Equine, Jelka Mats, Ascot Racecourse have worked with us, and Martin Collins Enterprises. But we want to try and build a movement where we've got more people championing us, getting behind us, and thinking of us when it comes to things like Charity of the Year award at events and in their own CSR for the businesses. So there's the equestrian industry. We need more grant funding, but I'm not actually going to touch on our grant funders because there's so many of them, and I don't upset anybody. But we need just people that are well connected and believe in the power of horses to help young people, just to get in touch and think about how they can support us. That might be through connections, it might be through sharing your expertise and your business knowledge. We're currently recruiting for some new trustees. So we're at this point of growth where we've kind of reached where we wanted to get to, and we're about to get to the next stage. And a lot of our trustees are reaching the end of their 3-year term. So we're looking to bring in people with knowledge of the equestrian industry, with business skills, with knowledge of the charitable world. So basically, if you believe that horses can help young people, and you think there's any way you could help us with that, we'd like to hear from you.
Amazing.
Have I missed
Do you have
anyone,
anything
Gemma?
to add to that, Jemma?
No, I don't. I think Rosie's done a really good job. I think just to say that the staff and volunteers and trustees that we have, a lot of them, they go over and above. Everyone in the horse world goes over and above their average hourly pay rate, but they really, really do. Every staff and volunteer that we have will always go above and beyond their time, what they're paid for. The trustees meet so regularly and help us through learnings and operational issues and stuff like that. We need some bigwigs with some money, if I'm being honest. We know there are some people out there who have personal links with horses, with the sport world, who's just got the 5,000, 10,000s. They make a big difference. It might not feel like it, but £5,000 can pay for a whole group for 12 weeks. And when, and we say, come and see those kids that you're paying for, come and see the difference you're making. 800 kids, it costs 800,000 to run the whole site each year, as well as 800,000 additionally, which we're going to need to build it. But yeah, it's £1,000 a child. That's what's needed, and we're going to be wanting to do that, for years to come. So the ask is money and recognition that it's such a needed service, as our other services doing similar work to us, and we want to support all of them as well.
Perfect. Let's summarize. Strength through learning with horses. Is that how I said it? Have I said it right?
Strength and learning. strength and learning.
Rebranding. We can hear from
Through-
help with someone help us rebrand just in terms of who can help
strength
us.
and learning through
And
horses.
Yeah. Okay. In summary, Strength and Learning Through Horses is a charity which is out there pioneering the way for younger people to learn the skills that they need when they've been through challenging times or have challenging needs, to gain the skills they need to go out into the wider world, whether that be with horses or in jobs and so on. And so if you're looking to partner with an organization like this, please feel free to get in contact, and I'll put all of your details for the organization and charity in the show notes below this or next to this, wherever you're listening to it. So please click on those, find them, and get in contact. And then final words from you guys, Jemma and Rosie?
No, just thank you for having us. It's been
Brilliant.
a
So
real
much, Hannah.
pleasure. And we're just looking forward to meeting more equestrian partners.
Yeah, no, and it's getting the word out there, isn't it? It's getting the word out there. But, it's amazing the amount of people that probably don't even know this happens. And so this is why this is so important, because, we're all in our own little world, particularly in the horsey world. We're all great. We're all very emotive people, but sometimes we get stuck in our world and don't realize all these other fantastic projects are going on outside of it.
Thank
So,
you.
thank you very much for today. And we will speak again soon.
Brilliant. Thank you.